How's it going, everybody? Welcome to another edition of The Opinion. Don't have my normal setup here. I'm just holding the phone, so I'm going to see if I can knock this one out as fast as I can as well. So I want to talk about the Oklahoma Sooners, obviously, and obviously I made some predictions. No, I'm probably going to be wrong on that. You guys can go ahead and pile in right now, but obviously Oklahoma lost to Tennessee, and the Oklahoma offense has obviously not gotten off to a great start. They've gotten off to a horrible start to the season. Looks like there's going to be a quarterback change, possibly, but that's not for me to really get into in this particular video. And like I said, Oklahoma lost to Tennessee. The offense, once again, probably had its worst performance of the season thus far. But I want to talk about a couple of coaches on the Oklahoma Sooners staff, and in no way, I would never come out and talk about a person needs to lose their job, because at the end of the day, that's somebody's livelihood and things like that. But this is something that I believe that Brent Venables needs to seriously consider when it comes to a couple of the coaches on this staff, because there's been a problem with Oklahoma with a couple of position groups that have been really festering, and now they've kind of been festering underneath the surface because Oklahoma was able to get around them. Due to better offensive play, due to better quarterback play, or what have you. And these two position groups are offensive line and tight end. And I want to focus on those particular coaches. I know it's going to sound crazy, but I think Brent Venables needs to have a serious thought process about, after the season, is Bill Bedenbaugh somebody he wants to bring back, but at the same time, Joe John Finley. And I know Joe John Finley played for Oklahoma while Brent Venables was a coach. So these are the couple of coaches that I think Brent Venables needs to have a hard conversation and a hard thought process after the season. Does he want to move forward with these particular coaches on the staff? Let's start with Joe John Finley. Well, we know that when Brent Venables first came to Oklahoma, he said he wanted to have a developmental program. So that means developing players, not only players, on the football field, but also developing people, in developing young men into grown men, or developing boys into, young men as well. But let's just focus on the football part of it, because I'm pretty sure Oklahoma is doing the stuff outside of football by developing men. But let's talk about Joe John Finley. His first year at Oklahoma was Lincoln Riley's last year, right? So in that time, from 2021 till now, how many of Joe John Finley's recruits out of high school that he's recruited to the University of Oklahoma, how many of his recruits at tight end have had significant playing time with Oklahoma? Zero. He's not developing. And then two, his recruiting outside of the tight end that they pulled last year, his recruiting at the tight end position has been subpar at best. But overall, he's not developing. And so what has Oklahoma had to do almost every year in the transfer portal? They've had to go reach into the portal and grab a tight end who probably shouldn't even be at Oklahoma when you're thinking about what Oklahoma's standard should be in terms of the type of players that they have. So one, Joe John Finley, his recruiting has been probably subpar. Recruiting is part of his job. But also developing the talent that he gets in the room is also part of his job. And I would probably give Joe John Finley an F on both of those, because, like I said, when it comes to the players that he has recruited, not transfer players, but the players that he's recruited out of high school, none of these guys have done anything significant at the University of Oklahoma since he has been there. And this is now his fourth year at Oklahoma. He hasn't done anything with that tight end group. That tight end group has probably been the worst group outside of the 2022 year when Braden Willis actually did something, but Braden Willis was not his recruit as well. And then you look at this particular year, they brought in, Bauer Sharp from Southeast Louisiana and Jake Roberts. Well, Jake Roberts was a third string at Baylor. What is he doing starting at OU? And this is no way to disrespect Jake Roberts, but come on, guys, we have to really think about this. A third stringer at Baylor is now getting a lot of playing time at OU. A guy from Southeast Louisiana is now starting for the University of Oklahoma. Now, you compare that to OU's competition. Is Texas going to Southeast Louisiana to get a starting tight end? Is Texas going to Baylor to get a starting tight end? And the answer is no. And then when you flip over to Bill Bedenbaugh, I understand that Bill Bedenbaugh's had a lot of offensive linemen that have went to the NFL, and I understand that Bill Bedenbaugh maybe used to be the best offensive line coach in the country, but Bill Bedenbaugh's not the best offensive line coach in the country. We can't keep talking about what a guy was. We got to talk about what a guy is. And when it comes to, once again, Venable said he wanted to have a developmental program. How many guys in the last 3 to 4 years, we'd say since 2020, has Bill Bedenbaugh recruited from high school that he's actually developed into a really, really good offensive line player? We're not talking about transfers. And if you look at it, since 2020, he's basically been filling this offensive line with transfers, with guys from programs who they came from programs at that particular position, offensive line, that they shouldn't even be at OU. You look at this year, they pulled in, a guy from they pulled in a guy from SMU and a guy from North Texas. And I'm not trying to bag on those particular players, but when you look at it, when you look at what Texas is doing, is Texas pulling offensive line players from Group of 5 schools, North Texas and SMU? I know SMU's in the ACC now, but they weren't. And the answer is no. And so when you look at it, why is Bill Bedenbaugh having to go into the portal every year, but yet and still he's recruited guys out of high school, but none of those guys can seem to consistently stay on the field. They don't consistently pan out. He's had too many guys over the last several years that, even there have been highly recruited guys, he's had too many guys that we say don't pan out. Eventually, if too many guys are not panning out, that's on you, the coach. You're not developing the talent that you are recruiting. And then now his player evaluations, in my opinion, have gotten bad. If you go look at some of the guys that Oklahoma's recruited, and once again, I'm not trying to take personal shots at some of these players, but at the end of the day, the standard of what Oklahoma should be at the offensive line position and the development that they should have is not there. You compare that to somewhere like Texas, Kyle Flood, who's actually recruiting highly rated offensive linemen, but then once he gets them there, he is developing them, not going into the portal to get an offensive lineman from North Texas or SMU, or to get an offensive lineman from, Southeast Louisiana State. So when you look at Bill Bedenbaugh, if you look at his player development over the last, so many years, it hasn't been good. And I understand, like I said, I understand Bill Bedenbaugh's put players in the NFL, but Tyler Guyton did not get to the NFL based on what Bill Bedenbaugh did. He didn't. He didn't even make first or second team All Big 12, and he was drafted in the first round. That should tell you something. That should tell you that was not based off anything that Bill Bedenbaugh did. That was because he already had a lot of upside. Anton Harrison, another one, already had a lot of upside. This was not something that Bill Bedenbaugh developed. Now, yeah, at one point in time, Bill Bedenbaugh, towards the end of Bob Stoops and the beginning of Lincoln Riley era, Bill Bedenbaugh, I take my hat off to him. But I think he's been at Oklahoma way too long. Things have gotten stale. He's gotten comfortable. And I just think things have gotten stale. And if I'm Brent Venables, I look at these two position groups and say, is it good enough? And is this something I want to move forward with? And I do that after the season, because those two position groups are only getting worse by the year. They're not getting better. And the player development at those two position groups is getting worse. I mean, there's no other way to say it. The player development is getting worse. And we're talking about guys that you're pulling out of high school, not some transfer that came in and already had some experience as well. So once again, we just need to look at Bill Bedenbaugh, Joe John Finley, and everything I'm saying in this video. You guys can vouch for it. You guys can go do the research yourself. But everything I'm saying is facts. We need to look at, as fans, and like I said, Brent Venables needs to take a hard look at those two positions and say, are those two positions up to par, or basically, can I go get someone else who is going to get those two position groups up to where they need to be? Because those two position groups are a big reason why this Oklahoma offense is now struggling. And now, like I said, these things have kind of been festering underneath the surface, and now they're out in the open for everyone to see. So that's my 2 cents. Leave your comments down below.